we've got two stories for everyone this week. Two pretty big developments in gun law on two separate sides of the country, two coastal states. What do we got first?
Yeah, so we got a permanent injunction issued first off in the California fee shifting case that we've been covering pretty heavily. This, of course, stems from California's attempt to copy Texas when they passed their bounty-style abortion ban last year. It was Governor Gavin Newsom, once the Supreme Court didn't strike down that law on procedural grounds. He responded with his own version of a law for guns that allows people to sue for assault weapons and ghost guns. But it also creates this crazy fee shifting provision where essentially if you try to sue the state of California over one of their gun laws, you have to be 100% successful on every single one of your claims in your lawsuit in order to, otherwise you have to pay the state your legal fees. You have to cover their attorney's fees. And
your lawyers are also liable.
Right. Yeah.
Which is pretty unique too.
Personally liable, which is obviously a massive disincentive to sue the state.
Right. And it actually did cause some gun rights groups to drop off of certain cases to sort of prioritize which laws they were going to challenge because of this provision. And, that's, by the way, something we predicted was going to happen after Texas passed their law. It was fairly, I think, clear that, at least to me, that this was going to get copied somewhere else and applied to something that Democrats don't like. And so in this case, it was guns. It didn't, And then, of course, the Texas law became moot anyway because the Supreme Court struck down Roe v. Wade right after they passed this law. But regardless, California went through with sort of spiting Texas and passing this law, which all the officials basically said was unconstitutional. In fact, the Attorney General, Rob Bonta, right, a Democrat in California, he had to remove himself from the case. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, he had to file a brief basically saying he's stepping away because he had a whole stream of past statements on California's law, calling it, and I quote, blatantly unconstitutional. So it's kind of tough to then go and defend a law that, by all accounts, all the California officials admit is a direct copycat of this law that you've called blatantly unconstitutional. So he stepped away.
He was facing potential sanctions from the court if he didn't do that because
that's right.
The gun rights groups out there, I think it was specifically California Rifle and Pistol Association, had filed a motion that could have resulted in sanctions for him if he hadn't stepped away.
That's right.
So, pretty embarrassing all around, I think, for California officials in this case. But how's the governor spinning this, by the way?
I was going to say, he doesn't seem to be taking it as very embarrassing. He put out a statement pretty soon after the ruling got handed down, basically saying he thanked Judge Roger Benitez, by the way, was the judge that handed down this injunction. Listeners may know him from several previous gun cases out of California where he's ruled against the state's gun laws in the past. But he put out a statement saying, thank you, Judge Benitez. We've been saying all along that Texas's anti-abortion law is outrageous. Basically, he just framed it as a indictment of Texas's abortion law, even though this case very specifically dealt with California's version, which Benitez, even in his opinion, drew a distinction between California's law and Texas's law because the fee shifting provision is a little more extreme in California's case. So he's pretty defiant about the whole thing, to be honest.
Yeah, he sort of took this tone of, well, this was why we passed the law in the first place, to get it declared unconstitutional. I think there's a couple problems with that point of view, though, or that argument, which is, for one, just like Rob Bonta, who stepped away because he couldn't defend the law because he thought it was unconstitutional. Well, in the lead up to that decision, he had gone around trying to avoid challenges to this law. He tried to moot them ahead of time by effectively declaring that the state wouldn't pursue damages in any of the gun cases that were already in front of them, as a way of trying to avoid judges looking at this. Of course, Benitez is sort of famously, averse to California's legal tricks or legal maneuvering when it comes to gun cases. He's ruled against a number of their gun laws, so he didn't buy this sort of attempt to sidestep the issue. and so he ruled the way that like everyone would expect it to happen. I think one of the issues with this was just like the issue in the Texas case is that it's there weren't any attempts to actually enforce this law, so it made it hard to challenge it. It's much harder to challenge something when there isn't an attempt to enforce it, right? So, but Benitez, I think, got fed up with the game of them, of them trying to pass the buck on this law, and just decided to go through with a case against it. And it is probably bad news for the Texas law too, I would assume, but it's a little odd to go out. I mean, I think one of the main complaints that that California had about this case getting heard at all was that they wanted to wait until Texas's law got declared unconstitutional before their law. It's like, it's not how things work.
That's not how it works. Yeah.
Not how it works. It's like that old Geico ad or whatever. It's not how any of this works. So they wanted to. It seemed pretty clear to me that if a judge had upheld the Texas law, that then California would switch their tune to saying, well, it is constitutional now, and then they would try to enforce it. So, they're being a bit disingenuous, it feels like, California officials on this one. But yeah, so now, I guess it doesn't seem likely they're going to appeal this decision, does it?
I wouldn't assume, based on that statement, that sort of celebratory statement from Newsom. Right. He wasn't outraged at all by the decision. He just sort of took it as him spiking the football that his culture war symbol turned on Texas, I guess. So
it's like celebrating that he passed an unconstitutional law, basically.
Right. And
it's
wasted
I knew
taxpayer
it was
money.
Unconstitutional, and I passed it anyway.
Right.
Like, okay.
Exactly.
It's not really a win. It doesn't feel like a win from the outside here, but okay. Obviously, I get the philosophical point that they don't like Texas's law, and that's fair. But passing a law is unconstitutional is it doesn't seem like a win.